Hello and welcome to The Absolute Truth with Emerald Robinson. I'm Eduardo Norret in for Emerald all week. Some big news coming out of the Supreme Court today that has some huge ramifications for the 2024 election. More on that in a minute. But first, Donald Trump is beating President Joe Biden in the race for 2024. At least that's what the New York Times is telling us. And look, if the left-wing New York Times is saying it, you can bet that trouncing Trump is giving Biden in the polls is much greater than what they're even reporting. There are a handful of key issues where Trump is running circles around Joe Biden this campaign season. That includes the economy, which despite whatever Biden wants to campaign on, Bidenomics, the economy's great, inflation's down, whatever he wants to say, the American people feel the economy's just not doing great. Just look at your grocery bills. Everyone knows that under President Trump, the economy was doing much better. Then, of course, there's the issue of the border crisis, which Biden appears to completely not care about. He completely ignores it. He won't address it. And lastly, there's the matter of how Trump and Biden are viewed by the electorate. Well, just since a few years since leaving office, Trump is obviously far more mentally competent and physically fit than the incumbent, Joe Biden. Any first-year political science student can see this. Any American can see it. A child could see it. The image coming from the White House, the perception that the President of the United States is weak, inept, and not mentally there on a day-to-day basis is damaging for the president in the polls. The campaign is now scrambling out to put out favorable news stories. They're leaking stories to their friends in the press. Biden is losing to Trump by as many as 5 points in some polls, like the New York Times, to as many as 20 in other polls. So all of this tells us one thing. Trump is beating Biden. And the electorate is just sick and tired of Bidenomics, Joe Biden's foreign policy, Joe Biden's open border, and his entire presidency. Joining me to talk about Trump, Biden, and the fight for the White House is Vince Everett Ellison. He released a documentary film last year called Will You Go to Hell for Me? And he's also the host of the Vince Everett Ellison's Show on X and YouTube. Vince, thanks for joining us. So much from the New York Times' latest polls, very revealing what the American public sees with Joe Biden. I just want to go through the numbers with you quickly and get you to react. Trump is leading with Latinos 46 to 40% with Joe Biden. Joe Biden's support among African Americans down to 66%, a terrible low among previous Democrat presidents. Also, on the economy, just 18% feel that Joe Biden has helped them, and 40% compared to Trump. 40% of Americans in this poll say that that Donald Trump's policies, helped them. And then when you talk about being hurt by policies, 43% of Americans say Biden's policies are hurting them, compared to just 25% of Trump. So what's going on here? Why the shift? I mean, I think maybe when Trump left office, the American people felt a little differently about him. What are the American people saying with this new poll?
Joe Biden is such a terrible president. He has done something that no other Democrat has been able to do in history, and that is make the Black community leave the Democrat Party. I mean, the Democrat Party, since its inception in 1800, has been the party of slavery from 1800 to 1860. Party of the Confederacy from 1860 to 1865, the party of Jim Crow from 1865 to 1965, and the party of abortion up to the 9th month, transgenderism, atheism, illegal borders, letting illegals cross over the border, gun control, you name it. But the one thing they've done, with all that inconsistency and all that stupidity, they've always kept the Black vote. And now they've gotten so corrupt and so terrible and so nasty that even the Black community is leaving them. What the Democrats did is two things that they really screwed up on. They revealed their mask and took it off, and they allowed the Black community to see that they were two things they had already said that they weren't. They proved that they were a godless atheist party, and they proved that they were trying to use the public educational system to transition their children and sexualize them and sexual groom them. When they really, really allowed the Black community to see that, that's when the Black community started leaving them. People say it's the economy. Now, Black people have always been poor. Hispanic people in America, we've always had a high rate of poverty. And they've always been Democrats. As a matter of fact, Black people were Democrats because they were poor. They thought the Democrats would give them free stuff. It wasn't that. The one thing that Black people will never agree to, and that is you turning against their God and for you messing with their children. And the Democratic Party has proven that they have been doing both for a very, very long time, and it's finally caught up with them.
It's fascinating you say that about the economy, always affecting the African-American vote in the same way, and you seeing it as other issues. And I think there's another side of the coin that I'd love for you to speak on and maybe talk about how some members of your community have reacted to President Trump. I mean, what is it about his message, do you think? Obviously, there's the fact that, they don't like Biden, okay? But we're also seeing President Trump's support amongst the black voters has increased, I think I read today, by 500%. I mean, he's now polling at 23% with some black voters. So not only is Biden's message bad, we get that, but what is it about Trump's that they're finally saying, you know what, I will vote for a Republican, I will vote for this guy. Maybe if I didn't even vote for him the last 2 times, this time I'm going to vote for him. What is it?
Well, they recognize that the Democrats are lying to them about Trump. They recognize that they're doing all of these dirty deals and all of these shenanigans and trying to lock the man up and got 91. I mean, Trump got more charges on him than R. Kelly, man. And everybody knows that's a bunch of foolishness. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows that they are trying to keep, for instance, what happened in the Supreme Court today. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that the Democrats are trying to set Trump up.
Yeah.
It's just, and so, and every time they try to come at it, you see what's going on inside Atlanta, Fannie Willis and all of them, trying to set him up. Everybody is trying to trump charges on him up in New York City. What they've done to him. They had already ruled that Donald Trump was guilty before the trial even started when he came down to his buildings and the money that he owed. People see this for what it is. The Democratic Party is an evil institution. They're a party that wants to castrate little boys and call them little girls. They're a party that want to cut the breasts off little girls and call them little boys. They're a party that believes in 9-month abortion. They're seeing how all these illegals come over the border now and come into their own communities, and how the Democrats are giving these people thousands of dollars to come here illegally. And you got black families that have been over here for 20 generations that can't get a dime from them. And they understand they're being erased, they understand they're being set up, and they're not happy about it. And then they see that they're doing Trump the same way. So Trump's a kindred spirit now. He's part of the community.
Well, I'm so glad you say that, because that's something about illegal immigration to me that I've never understood why it's not part of the conversation on either side. I mean, the Republicans don't use the message enough, and of course, we know why the Democrats ignore it, but illegal immigration hurts one community more than any other, and that is low-income, lower-middle-class Americans, and that includes Americans of all stripes, but specifically in the cities, that hurts black Americans. I mean, when you have millions of new migrants coming to New York, Chicago, LA, Miami, I mean, the people who are going to be hurt by that are black working voters. And so, do you think they've come to realize this about immigration? And again, it's nothing to say about the immigrants coming across, but do you think the Republican Party is now the party that speaks to them in terms of economics, that's saying to them, okay, we will protect your jobs, we will protect you from the new migrants that have come here?
No, it's not the GOP that's doing it. It's that the people are seeing it with their own eyes. They are living in these communities in Chicago, up in New York. They're living in these communities in LA. They're talking to each other. They're seeing it online. See, the very thing that the devil has used to try to take America out, we're now using to educate America. You can't hide it anymore. This stuff is going online. People are seeing it on TikTok. They're seeing it on YouTube. They're seeing it on X, where these illegals are actually coming into their communities and taking over. And that the Democrats are offering them money, offering them space, offering them housing and free medical care to come to America to slide the black community out. And the black community doesn't appreciate that. They see that the Democratic Party believes this one thing: you're like an abused wife. We can do anything to you, and you are going to do what we tell you to do. And now I think they pushed them too far. For 200 years, this has worked. But now they pushed them a little too far. It's like when Frederick Douglass decided to beat up his slave master, Colby. Colby hit Frederick one too many times, and Frederick lit him up. And I think that the Democrat Party has hit the black community in the face and disrespected them one too many times. You know, not just that we're going to mistreat you and keep you poor. That's bad enough. Now we're going to disrespect your God. We're going to sexually groom your children. And then we're going to bring illegals in here and give them more than we've ever given you. And they're saying that's enough. Trump's not going to do this. Trump's going to treat us much better than you guys are treating us, and it's time for y'all to go.
It's completely insulting. It's a message that is such a disgrace to people who've been here for generations. Let me ask you last question. You said something at the top of the interview about the Democratic Party becoming the godless, faithless party. And it's interesting, on Bill Maher's show Friday night, he had a conversation with Dr. Phil, and Dr. Phil said to him, we need to bring faith back into our country. It's okay that people have different faiths, but faith, what it means to society, what it means to the family. And Bill Maher completely dismissed it out of hand. I mean, he was sort of bragging in the interview about how he's an atheist and how atheism is good for the country. Tell me a little bit about what you mean by that, about losing faith, maybe in both political parties, really in different ways. And why do you think it's important? Do you think we'll be able to bring it back into our politics and how it can help the country?
Look, it was John Adams that said after the Constitutional Convention that this Constitution is designed for a moral and a religious people. It's wholly inadequate for any other. We have too much freedom in America. We weren't meant to be a police state. Our Christian virtues were the virtues that started this country. It's where our Constitution came from. As a matter of fact, our Declaration of Independence says that our rights are unalienable rights. Unalienable rights are rights that come from God. So how can you not be a Christian or a religious people when the whole foundation of your country is that our rights come from God? They don't come from government. And then we wrote a Constitution, and we had a Bill of Rights. And these Bill of Rights said these are rights that you cannot touch government because they came to us from God. If you take God out of that equation, then government becomes God. And the government can do anything they want to you. And this is why Democrats want to erase God out of everything. They don't compete for power. See, right now, we can say, no, you can't touch my freedom of religion. You cannot touch my freedom. Why? It came from God. You can't touch it. And if you try to touch it, I have the Second Amendment that'll get you up off of me. So Democrats have to erase God because then they say, no, we give our rights to you. You have to bow to us. We're God now. This is what the communists and the Marxists have always tried to build all over the world. And the Democrats are doing it here. And people are finally recognizing it. They want to erase God out of the public square. If you go to a football game and you kneel to protest your government, they will applaud you. But if you kneel to pray to your God, they'll put you in jail. If you go to school and you bring pornography into the library, they will applaud you. If you bring a Bible into the library, they'll try to put you in jail. They kicked Jesus out of the schools and brought the drag queens in, shaking their behinds in the children's faces. This is who these people are. They are an evil institution. And until we run them out, until we put them back where they belong, America will never be the great nation they're supposed to be.
So true. They want people not to be servants to God, but servants to the state. Vince Everett Ellison, thanks. You can check out his podcast, like I said, X and YouTube. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
The Supreme Court issued a major ruling today that will affect the 2024 election. Will Trump finally be let on the ballot? Well, we'll tell you straight ahead.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Rose, CEO of Genesis Gold Group. Can your retirement savings like an IRA or 401k stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our very doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. With a multi-trillion-dollar trade deficit and geopolitical instability, experts say now is the time to make the switch. Protect your retirement today with one simple phone call and receive your free gold and silver guide.
Call Genesis Gold Group today at 1-800-200-GOLD and find out how you can add precious metals to your IRA. That's 1-800-200-GOLD or 1-800-200-4653. Or visit genesisgoldgroup.com. Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship.
There's a concerted effort to intimidate and censor conservative thinkers. The very freedoms secured by our Constitution are being threatened by the most liberal progressives America has ever seen. They're trying to indoctrinate and corrupt our children in schools. They've defied the authority of the Supreme Court. They've weakened our economy with lockdowns and mandates. They've failed to keep our borders secure. They've weakened America's position on the global stage. It seems like everything they do is to the detriment of our great nation. But there are plenty of patriots with the courage to stand up to the left, and there's an easy way for you to stand with them. Join AMAC. AMAC is the conservative membership organization that's helping to make America great again. AMAC is a voice for conservatives that cannot be ignored. Stand with over 2 million America-loving patriots by joining AMAC today.
Well, some big news out of the Supreme Court today. American voters who want to vote for Donald Trump, President Trump supporters, can finally breathe a sigh of relief. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously in a 9-0 ruling that states like Colorado and other blue states cannot unilaterally strip candidates like Trump from the election ballots. So this is a win for democracy. These left-wing blue states, Illinois was one of the other ones, they were trying to prevent voters from voting for their candidate of choice. The Supreme Court did this based on the 14th Amendment's insurrection clause. The court also ruled that Congress is the body of government that has the power over candidates for federal office, not the states. So again, state officials cannot violate due process by deciding what candidates they dislike or what candidates they like. They can't call them an insurrectionist. You can't disenfranchise voters. That's what the Supreme Court ruled today. So Colorado, Maine, they'll have to hold free and fair elections. The horror, they will have to allow their people to decide on who is our president. They'll have to leave it up to the voters themselves. So if you're a Democrat out there, MSNBC watcher, Rachel Maddow, today's not a very good day for you. The Supreme Court ruling also appears to apply to Illinois, where a judge recently ruled to strike Trump from the ballot as well, based on the same flimsy ruling. So we expect that one to go away too. So joining us now to discuss all of this is former Department of Justice Assistant Attorney General Katie Sullivan. Katie, thanks for coming on.
Hi, Eduardo. Great day, huh?
I know. So tell us about it. I mean, I think most people were expecting, a Trump victory, I think, fingers crossed. But wow, a unanimous decision. I mean, how did we get here? And walk us through what you think went on behind closed doors.
Well, I mean, in the current climate of our justice system, I don't think we can take anything for granted. So after listening to the oral argument, it certainly seemed like the justices were all leaning toward, keeping him on the ballot without any question. But the majority opinion in this case is better than really we could have hoped. It's the best thing for our president, Donald J. Trump. And that is that he was kept on the ballot. And in essence, they said states cannot decide who is on the ballot for federal positions, particularly the president of the United States. And the only way, and this is, they took the language directly out of the Constitution, that this could be altered is by an act of legislation by Congress. So if you go to Section 5 of the 14th Amendment, it clearly states that only by legislation, that by Congress, can basically this amendment be applied. So it was a complete plain reading of the Constitution. It's stunning that the Colorado courts were not able to read the Constitution and went so far afield. I say this as a former member of the Colorado bench, where I was a state trial court judge. And I do like to remind your listeners, Emerald's listeners, that in Colorado, there's retention votes. And so you have a group of Supreme Court justices, 5 Colorado Supreme Court justices who got this so wrong, just so incredibly wrong, and a district court judge who got it wrong from even having a hearing and thinking that the state could weigh in. I think that voters in Colorado have to seriously think about this when they go to the ballot to say yes or no on retention for any one of these judges.
Of course, and I want to ask you about that, and even at the Supreme Court level, I mean, if we would have had a 5-4 decision today, 6-3, I mean, with how divided our country is, that wouldn't have helped, you know what I mean? I mean, it would have further marked those partisan lines, but even at the state level, I mean, is there a way we can remove partisanship out of our courts? I mean, a lot of judges at a local state level are elected, unfortunately. A lot of times their party affiliation is, even if it's not explicitly stated, people get a sense of what side they're on. I mean, is there a way around that, or is that part of something we're stuck with just how our system runs?
I mean, I do think, Eduardo, that I guess when I look at it, and I was raising the flag about this like in 2012, and that's when, 11 and 12 is when George Soros made a very sweeping statement, and that is, I'm going to take over the criminal justice system in this country. He then started to just very quietly fund local prosecutor races. But that's been going on much longer than sort of 2018, when it became a much more well-known fact. And any Soros involvement in a prosecutor's office is pretty well known to the voters now. But I think that people maybe just weren't educated on how much power a prosecutor has. They probably are the most influential, powerful elected position in any locality, because they decide who, as we can see now, with what's going on with the President of the United States and many other people, say in Georgia, what is it, 18 other people and the president who have been charged by a district attorney there, and the kind of authority that she has in which to do that. So I think that happened, and now we just need to have a reversal of it through voting. You know, people have to be very, very aware of what they're voting for. And if this is acceptable, you know, I do believe that things take place in the ballot, but in the ballot, right, with ballots. But I will say that I also think that that we need to wake up and take the criminal justice system back.
Of course. Last question, Katie, because I know you got to run. Can you give us a glimpse into how you think the Supreme Court's going to rule based on the law and based on the Constitution in the January 6th trial? Do you think they will, rule in favor of Trump having immunity in this case, or against him?
Well, I certainly think they should, and weeding through all the pleadings and everything that's happened and the charges that are brought against him there, I certainly think that they should. He was making an act in his official duty. And I think that presidents are going to be very, very concerned for any movement that they make if they know that they can be under criminal immunity. Immunity statutes are in place so that our elected officials, prosecutors, police officers who aren't necessarily elected, but we have these immunity judges. We have these immunity laws in place in order to protect them. And so, yes, I certainly hope the Supreme Court does the right thing. I do not expect that to be a 9-0 decision like today, though.
Katie Sullivan, former Justice Department Assistant Attorney General. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Eduardo.
Coming up, the media have a clear double standard between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. There's one latest example, and it's quite the creepy one from the weekend. That's next.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0. When I invented My Pillow, it had everything you'd ever want in a pillow. Well, now there's new technology that makes it even better. My Pillow 2.0 has my patented fill combined with a cooling fabric with temperature regulating thread. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
Now's the time to go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use the promo code to save 50% on your My Pillow 2.0. Not only that, for a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
mypillow.com.
Remember the media hysteria about everything Trump did during his presidency? The guy couldn't drink a glass of water without being attacked for it. Let's watch what Joe Biden did this weekend by contrast. Here he was with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and we want you to ask yourselves this question. How would the media have reacted if Donald Trump did this? You see the video on your screen now. That is, yes, the President of the United States kissing the Italian Prime Minister. Creepy, harassment, maybe both. But we don't have to guess how the media would have reacted if it were Trump. As Kyle Becker remarked on X, Donald Trump was subjected to relentless accusations of sexist behavior towards women while in office. Here is Joe Biden kissing the Italian Prime Minister, and the media are silent. Everything in the media is fake outrage. Nothing can be taken seriously. They're all frauds. And of course, I agree with that completely. But look, maybe these incidents wouldn't be considered so weird, so strange, if Biden himself didn't have a history of inappropriate touching. Things like this.
Happy New Year.
God love you. Great to see you. Why don't you kiss me? Thank you. I don't have a doubt about it.
Thank you.
How are you? God love you. I know this ain't a one-man sport.
No, it's not.
Great.
Thank you all for your patience.
Bring the whole family up.
Come on.
Come on.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, good to see you. You're getting old, aren't you? Sally, how are you? You got a smile that lights up the whole Senate chamber. Good to see you. You're getting too old. You're getting too old and too lovely. What are you, a senior?
A junior.
Oh,
This is my daughter-in-law.
Hi, Kelly. How are you? Hi, Jack. You have very good taste.
That's our president, Joe Biden. Also this weekend, as Biden shuffled off Marine One for another weekend vacation camp at Camp David, there aren't enough problems in the world. He's not busy enough to deal with any of them. A little girl caught Biden's eye, and he made a beeline right for her. Take a look. Creeper in chief. That's probably a more appropriate title for him. Look, to say such behavior is beneath the dignity of the office is an understatement. So joining me now is Kyle Becker. Kyle, you have some thoughts on why the media has been ignoring Biden's history of inappropriate touching. Look, he's been credibly accused in the same way, or maybe more credibly, than Donald Trump has. So why the disconnect?
You know, so one of the reasons I thought this story was important is not just because of the Me Too movement. I'm not attacking anyone who has accused someone credibly or not credibly about inappropriate touching. Like, that's not the point here. The point is, it says a lot about the mainstream media that they have this disparity in treatment between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Now, you can remember back when Donald Trump was accused dozens of times of inappropriate touching, forcibly kissing. You remember there was the case of the staffer in 2016, Alva Johnson from Georgia. She actually brought a lawsuit that accused Donald Trump of forcibly kissing her. And then the Trump team released the video of it just being a little peck on the cheek, very similar to what Joe Biden just did. And then she dropped the lawsuit, but still continued to insist that that is what Donald Trump did, was forcibly kiss her. Then we had journalists like Katie Tur over at NBC, and then you had Juliet Huddy over at Fox News, had very similar things about Donald Trump. Now, what I'm trying to tease out of this story is that the issue is not the issue for the mainstream media. It's very surreal how you have Joe Biden's inappropriate touching, let alone the Ashley Biden diary, which, you know, people actually had to plead guilty to stealing it, but we're not supposed to believe what's in it. You know, Project Veritas was put through the ringer over that, and you could say that their rights were trampled in some ways by just having a raid to get this to try to find out this document to get it. And we're just all supposed to ignore this out of Joe Biden, but believe things about Donald Trump, remember the PP dossier. I mean, like we're supposed to just take that on word, but we have reels and reels of video of Joe Biden acting creepy, inappropriate touching, being sexist. And where are all the female journalists in the media protesting about Joe Biden being lecherous and salacious and inappropriate? No, they just whitewash it. So it's not just about the Me Too touching that is the real problem. That's just one of many, many examples of the media giving a disparity in treatment between Biden and Trump. And the bigger story of that is you cannot trust these people to report fairly because the issues are not what is important to them. They are only weaponizing issues, whether it's the LGBTQ agenda, Me Too, you can go down the list, the trans agenda, critical race theory, pretty much everything that you could possibly think of, every issue in the critical theory spectrum, they just grab that, weaponize it to attack their enemies, to demonize them, and to take them down. And it's their goal to maintain people in power by attacking the enemies of the power, the real power brokers who control the government. And so the thing for me, Eduardo, is we have to think about how we process the news now. I would suggest to ignore the mainstream media whenever possible. But whenever something comes up and it appears to be a real issue, go straight to the source. And that's what I try to do as independent journalist, just give people the sources, arm them to investigate themselves, show people how to think about issues, not hide my bias and act like I'm unbiased, because I'm not, I'm not a philosopher king, right? I don't know everything.
But I'm glad you're saying this, and I was going to ask you because, look, it's to a certain extent, it's not even about Trump anymore in the sense that there's obviously this double standard, but I think what the media have done is they've used Trump as an excuse to treat all Republicans like this in the future. And it's not to say that they didn't do that before. Look, the Maloney thing, for example, it's not like our side is saying Biden should be impeached over it or anything like that. I mean, look, it's obviously creepy, but I mean, like you said at the top, I mean, the fact that they just ignore it or pretend it didn't happen, the same thing with the way he walks around aimlessly with that stiff gait. I mean, the way he sits there with his mouth open sometimes. I mean, at a certain point, this is a choice. They're choosing to ignore it, and yet they get away with it. So, like you said, we can show Americans to go straight to the source. But outside of that, I mean, is there any way to hold these institutions accountable?
Well, I think you support independent journalists. My thing has been always to not just complain about the media, but to replace the media. So we see all these negative things happening in the country around us, and we can complain about it, or we can get sucked into the negativity, and we can doom scroll. Or we can do creative things. We can do positive things for our country. We can help our community. We can protect our kids. We can be active. Do good things. Don't just complain about bad things. And that's one, be a positive example for people in your community and uplift people and empower them. That's the way we fight back. And that's why I'm a part of Emerald's show, because I think she does a good job. When I'm producing with her, of going after the facts, letting the truth speak for itself, and giving the other side a fair hearing.
Well, let me ask you another example of a double standard that we're seeing the Biden camp ramp up in recent days is this idea of, democracy's on the line. I think a Biden campaign spokesperson leaked to the press that a strategy you're going to see them use is pointing to January 6th. And, we want January 6th to be at the forefront of every American's mind ahead of November. And so Biden himself, a couple days ago, I think over the weekend too, had come out and sort of said, Trump is not going to concede if he loses the election again. He's going to do everything to keep control of power, which I think is sort of an interesting statement. I mean, you look at the guy who's jailing his political opponents, who's going after innocent Catholic pro-lifers, who's going after people who protest in schools, and this is the same guy saying that the other guy, Trump, will do anything to hold on to his power. So what do you make of that? And again, it's one of those double standards that the media are just going to let him get away with.
Well, the Democrats always accuse their enemies of what they themselves are doing.
Yes.
And they've been doing this for a long time. The Russia hoax and, the election interference started with them. And it's continuing to this day. But I just wanted to deconstruct really quick the fake narrative about all of this. First of all, Donald Trump, as you can see, like in the Kash Patel's testimony that was released through the January 6 hearings, he said that then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows had as early as late November, released a statement instructing everyone to to put a transition team in place and to work with Joe Biden eventually coming into office. And the other thing is the January 6th uprising was allowed to happen by the FBI and Capitol Police effectively. You can read all the transcripts about Trump saying he wanted 10,000 to 20,000 National Guard troops. It had to go through the Department of Defense. There were certain people who could request it, such as Speaker of the House through the HSA, and also through Mayor Muriel Bowser could also request it. They did not do so. In fact, Speaker Pelosi's HSA continuously shot Capitol Police Chief's son down multiple times to say that, no, we're not requesting it right now. That's the other thing. But the third thing is right after the election was eventually certified on January 7th, after the election challenges just were waved away with a magic wand, then they certified it. Donald Trump released a video. You can still find it on X. It's still there, where he's talking about stepping down on January 20th. So this narrative does not comport with reality in any way, shape, and form, in my mind. Donald Trump as the commander-in-chief, there's never been an example of a coup in world history where a commander-in-chief as a head of the armed forces would send in a bunch of unarmed extremists to, like, I don't know, magically overturn the elections. There's just no way of explaining how. And actually, there were illegal constitutional election challenges going on at the time that could have potentially, if they were sent back to the states and the dominoes went the right way and the House eventually voted for him to be in office, then he would maintain the presidency. So I really like, we have a part of the country that's living in reality, is trying to seek news. And then you have the corporate media that is basically just putting out fiction. They're putting out narratives, fairy tales, and we're trying to live in reality. You cannot really be a part of their fantasy fairy tale land world, which is what it is.
I don't know how you have a country when there's two distinct realities being lived out. I mean,
that is the real challenge for us right now, Eduardo, is we have to try to help people live in the truth and respect the truth and to be rational. And I think the only way you can really do that is, like, you do journalism, podcasting, you show people how to be rational, you treat the other side, with enough respect to dismantle their arguments point by point. So we have to do good journalism as a starter. We have to protect free speech through getting victories like the Missouri v. Biden case is coming up. We need to get these victories to keep this and try to work to get the state out of our civil society. We need to get everything that has allowed the state to put propaganda into our media outlets. We have to cut that off. Big tech collusion. We have to get the State Department and the FBI and the CIA out of our media, out of our civil society, because ultimately we're the ones in charge of our country, and they are they're interfering in our elections and in our civil society, and we have to put them back in their box through the law. In addition to doing good journalism.
Like you say, they accuse us of what exactly they're doing. So independent journalist Kyle Becker, thank you. And if you want to read more of Kyle's work, you can find it at kylebecker@substack.com. Kyle, thanks.
Thank you.
Up next, a fresh face is running for Congress in Texas. He says Biden's border is out of control. He joins us next to share how the crisis is affecting his district. That's next.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Rose, CEO of Genesis Gold Group. Can your retirement savings, like an IRA or 401k, stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our very doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. With a multi-trillion-dollar trade deficit and geopolitical instability, experts say now is the time to make the switch. Protect your retirement today with one simple phone call and receive your free gold and silver guide.
Call Genesis Gold Group today at 1-800-200-GOLD and find out how you can add precious metals to your IRA. That's 1-800-200-GOLD or 1-800-200-4653. Or visit genesisgoldgroup.com. Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship.
There's a concerted effort to intimidate and censor conservative thinkers. The very freedoms secured by our Constitution are being threatened by the most liberal progressives America has ever seen. They're trying to indoctrinate and corrupt our children in schools. They've defied the authority of the Supreme Court. They've weakened our economy with lockdowns and mandates. They've failed to keep our borders secure. They've weakened America's position on the global stage. It seems like everything they do is to the detriment of our great nation. But there are plenty of patriots with the courage to stand up to the left, and there's an easy way for you to stand with them. Join AMAC. AMAC is the conservative membership organization that's helping to make America great again. AMAC is a voice for conservatives that cannot be ignored. Stand with over 2 million America-loving patriots by joining AMAC today.
To celebrate the new year, we're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50% and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free. Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0. When I invented My Pillow, it had everything you'd ever want in a pillow. Well, now there's new technology that makes it even better. My Pillow 2.0 has my patented fill combined with a cooling fabric with temperature regulating thread. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
Now's the time to go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use the promo code to save 50% on your MyPillow 2.0. Not only that, for a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
MyPillow.com.
We know that immigration is a key issue for voters across the country, and according to our polling, by more than 5 to 1, voters believe President Biden's policies will lead more migrants to try crossing the border compared with President Trump's policies. Only 22% think your policies will decrease migrant crossings.
So President Joe Biden wants you to think that the border is under control. The only thing, according to him, that we have to fear about any of it is Donald Trump's supposed racism. Of course, same old trope they always use. But most Americans obviously disagree with that sentiment. They agree that the border is a crisis. This is especially true, obviously, for Americans living along the U.S. southern border. Just take a look how President Trump was received just a few days ago when he went to Texas to see the border for himself.
They like Trump. Could you believe it? They like the governor.
And as the border crisis continues to be unaddressed by President Biden, congressional Republicans also flounder on the issue. What are they doing about it? Nothing. So whatever they may say about addressing the border crisis, the fact remains that they do little to hold President Biden's feet to the political fire. The invasion is allowed to continue. They've done little to stop it. So at this point, if we continue waiting on either Democrats or Republicans in Washington, there won't be a country left to save. That's why it's essential to elect the right sort of candidates to higher office who will enforce the will of the people on the corrupt elements of the system, the very same corrupt elements that are preventing us from securing our border. One of those people, like Brandon Gill, could be the solution. He's running for Congress in Texas.
President Trump has endorsed Brandon Gill for Congress in the 26th District of Texas. Brandon is the authentic America First candidate in this race, and he shares President Trump's views on stopping crime, supporting our police, restoring election integrity, and securing the border. Brandon Gill will help us defeat the swamp and deliver on the America First agenda. Texas, please get out and vote for Brandon Gill.
So as you saw in that video, there's a lot more to Brandon Gill we want to tell you about. He's a father of a young family living in Texas. He has strong Texas roots. His grandfather was a pastor, and his father flew 60 combat missions during Desert Storm. Brandon's family also raised cattle and worked the land for many generations. Brandon Gill himself, he previously worked in the financial sector, but he gave it all away to go back to his home and help protect it from the obvious failures of Washington's corrupt uniparty. So with someone from a new generation running to change Washington, we thought we'd talk to Brandon ourselves. So joining us now is Brandon Gill, who will walk us through some of the issues affecting his district and why he's running for United States Congress. Brandon joins us now.
Eduardo, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Brandon. So I think something that interests a lot of people when it comes to the U.S. southern border is we see the visuals on our screen. We see the flow of millions of migrants coming across the border, and it's pretty easy to imagine and to see how that affects border communities. You're running for a district just north of Dallas, so more suburban Texas, and I think maybe that represents a lot of other communities across the country that deal with the border crisis in a different way. So tell me a little bit about how this crisis has been affecting your district.
Well, first of all, thanks again for having me on the show. I would say that within Texas 26, the district that I'm running in, there are a lot of political issues that people are talking about. The border is the issue. It is number one, far and away. This is what people are focused on, and we see that in my district firsthand. There are problems with fentanyl being smuggled across our southern border and flooding into our schools here. We've seen crime go up, and this is because of what the Democrats, the left, Joe Biden are doing on our southern border. I think the key point is that not only is this an intentional border crisis, and we know it's intentional because under President Trump, we had a secure border. We had a border wall that was under construction. As soon as Joe Biden got elected or got into the White House, he scuttled every single major border policy that President Trump had enacted. He put them all straight to the chopping block. So this crisis is intentional. So the question is, why are they doing this? And I think that the people of my district are very well aware of why they're doing it. The left is doing this to flood our country with people who they believe will be future, perpetual, reliable Democrat voters. And they're doing it intentionally to flood our communities, including our schools, with drugs like fentanyl, with crime, with cheap labor that rips apart our working class in America to create a crisis for big government to come in and solve. In other words, they're creating what they believe will be a fertile environment for the left-wing, big government socialist ideology to thrive in. The people of Texas 26 can see through this. They're eager to bring President Trump back into the White House, and they're also looking for a fighter to represent them in Congress, and I certainly will.
No, I'm glad you mentioned the school issue because I think so much of the time we focus on the crime element. Look at Lake and Riley just a couple days ago of illegal immigration. And of course, we don't want to downplay that. That's very real and people suffer because of illegal immigrant crime. But I think another element of illegal immigration that people don't often talk about is how it affects our schools, our hospitals, how it's a drain on our social resources, on what cities and municipalities are able to offer. And so people are now sending their kids to school in crowded classrooms, or the emergency rooms are crowded. So what are your thoughts on, assuming House Republicans take the majority, keep the majority in the House, maybe increase it a little bit, because as you know, the margins are razor thin right now. We get President Trump in office, maybe there's a Republican Senate. What do you think needs to be done on day one in terms of not only securing the border right now, but doing something about communities that have already been flooded with migrants? I mean, how do you solve that issue?
Yes, and one thing on that, President Trump does not get enough credit for being on the ideological forefront of the Republican Party. He has talked about his immigration policy once he gets elected this fall and gets into office next year. We've got to bring back the border wall. We've got to finish the wall. We've got to bring back Remain in Mexico. We've got to reform our asylum laws. We've got to bring back all of the Trump era policies that was keeping our country secure. But once we do that, remember, there are 10 million if not more, illegal aliens that Joe Biden has brought into this country, flooded our communities with. And if we stop there, if we just stop by securing the border, that's not good enough anymore. And President Trump knows that, and I will be 100% behind him in deporting every single illegal alien Joe Biden brought into this country. Because if we're not going to deport the people that the left is bringing into this country to rig elections, to tear our social fabric apart, then we're not serious about border security. We're not serious about saving this country. So deportations on a large scale have to be on the table.
No, I totally agree. I mean, otherwise we don't have a country. I mean, like you say, there's 10 million, if not more, under Biden alone. Plus the, I love the media always say, oh, 11 million, 11 million. They've been using that figure for 20 years. I saw the Washington Post the other day just posted an article saying the same thing. There are an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country. So the number's clearly way more. Let me ask you to pivot. I read you're running in a really crowded primary, a lot of candidates. And so I think this is helpful for viewers watching, not just in Texas, but who are facing similar crowded primaries and who are looking at a lot of options in their districts of who to vote for this coming November. So what else are you running on? What other issues are important to you? And what do you say to voters out there who see a lot of different Republican options out there? What are some of the issues aside from the border that you think voters need to keep at the forefront when going to the polls?
Well, I think voters are sick and tired of the left's agenda across the board, whether it is reckless fiscal policy that's driving our country off of a cliff, whether it's the Democrats who are hell-bent on putting dirty books in our little children's schools, or whether it's just a constant stream of irresponsible governance from Washington. People are sick of it. But I'll tell you about my race in particular, because we're in a really interesting place. You're right, we've got 11 people in this Republican primary. We go to election day tomorrow, and if nobody gets above 50%, we go to a runoff. The top two candidates go to a runoff. So we're still fairly early on, theoretically. Now, what's happened about 3 weeks ago, some big DC swamp super PACs dumped $2 million into this race entirely against me, not in favor of any other candidate, not against any other candidate, just trying to knock me out. And again, we're not even in a runoff yet. This is early days. Now, why are they doing that? They're doing that because I've been endorsed by President Trump. They're doing it because I've been endorsed by Senator Cruz in the Freedom Caucus. And I've said from day one that I plan on being a member of the Freedom Caucus immediately. And the swamp doesn't want that. So I'm not too concerned about my other competitors in this race. Right now, we're fighting the swamp. The swamp is coming after me. They're coming after me hard because they don't want me there. They're spreading all kinds of slanderous lies about me in this district. But the good thing is that the people of Texas 26, the voters, the Republican voters in this district are smart. They can see through the lies. They can see through the slander. They know that if you're the Trump guy, if you're the Freedom Caucus guy, if you're the conservative fighter who's going to Washington to shake things up, they know that the swamp is going to come after you. And listen, we're feeling good going into tomorrow. The energy is there. The grassroots are entirely behind us, and we're swinging back at these guys.
That's good. Let me ask you, since you mentioned the swamp, look, there's a divided Republican Party. Obviously, it has been that way for a long time. And I think a lot of the voters who are participating in that divide, if you will, I mean, let's say a lot of the Nikki Haley voters, a lot of the supporters of other candidates in the Republican primary when they were still in the race, they're going to be left with a choice eventually of Trump or Biden. And we hear all this talk in the media about will these independents cross over and vote for Republicans, and not just Trump at the top, but someone like yourself. So does the message have to change at all to these voters? I mean, what's the appeal? At a certain level, it's obviously, well, look, it's Biden or Trump. Do you want 4 more years of the same? Maybe you don't like Trump personally. Maybe you don't like the tweets and all the stuff that he said, whatever. But it's a choice of policy here. Beyond that, what are some other arguments you would make to maybe some of these suburban Republican voters who Trump has lost over the years, or maybe some more independent-minded folks who Republicans are going to need to win in 2024?
Right. Well, you're right. Trump is effectively the nominee right now. The only primary Nikki Haley has won is the primary in the swamp. And I don't think that's something anybody should be proud of. If if the folks in DC are the only people in the country who want you in the White House, that's not a good thing. But you're right. I think the question is, do we want 4 more years of a president who cannot speak a coherent sentence, who clearly is on the verge of mental incapacitation? Or do we want a president who is strong, who can put a good foot forward for our country, who's not embarrassing on the world stage? Do we want another 4 more years of failed economic policies, of Bidenomics? You know, it's funny that Biden is the one who coined the term Bidenomics, and it's such a negative thing now because people can not only see inflation, but that they can feel it at the end of every week whenever they're balancing their own budget. They can see how bad Biden's policies are hurting their wallets. Do we want another 4 more years of being weak, on having a weak foreign policy? I don't think that the American people want that anymore. I know that the voters in Texas 26 are tired of Biden being in the White House and are dying to see President Trump back there.
Last question for you. Again, I mentioned at the top that you're part of this new younger generation that is going to Washington looking to change things. Part of the problem with the swamp, as you call it, is there are members who have been there for decades. There's senators who are literally pushing 90 years old and they've been there their entire lives. What is it about maybe someone in your generation? What can you bring to the table about policy, about people's lives, that some of the members of Congress, even if we agree with them on policy, that maybe they just don't quite understand? I mean, something that comes to mind to me is TikTok, you know, appealing to a younger generation on social media, but doing so in a way that's not alienating them. I mean, you know, when you're going to be in those rooms with these members in your own party, maybe who are a bit older, I mean, what do you think you're going to bring to the table in terms of your age and your generation that may help change the way the Republican Party looks at things?
Well, you're exactly right. There are a host of new issues that we've got to deal with, whether that's TikTok or think of things like cryptocurrencies, which are, I believe will be a key part of our monetary future that many people in the Republican Party simply don't understand, unfortunately. But the bigger issue, I think, and what voters across the board are looking for is they're looking for a Republican Party who is no longer living in the past. You know, we've had the same people in office doing the same thing for a very, very long time. And look at where it's gotten us. One of the reasons that our country is in such a terrible position right now is that the Republican Party, Republicans in office, haven't always been doing a good job of being meaningful opposition to what the left is doing to the country. So we need a Republican Party who's no longer living in the 1980s, who's no longer living in the 1990s, who realizes that the Democrat Party that we're up against now is not the Democrat Party of Tip O'Neill. It's not the Democrat Party of Blue Dog Democrats. That party is dead. And the Republicans need to wake up and start fighting back much more aggressively in Washington than we have been. We need to realize that the enemy that we're against now is the Democrat Party of open borders, of dirty books in schools. It's no longer the Democrat Party of safe, legal, and rare when it comes to abortion. It's the Democrat Party of shout your abortion and weaponize the federal government against pro-life activists. That's the enemy that we're up against. And I think young people and old people alike are looking for fighters who are actually going to stand up to the left. And that's what I'll be doing.
Well, Brandon, we wish you the best of luck. As you said, the primary is tomorrow, the first round of it. And then, of course, there will potentially be a runoff. So best of luck to you. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me on.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Rose, CEO of Genesis Gold Group. Can your retirement savings like an IRA or 401k stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our very doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. With a multi-trillion-dollar trade deficit and geopolitical instability, experts say now is the time to make the switch. Protect your retirement today with one simple phone call and receive your free gold and silver guide.
Call Genesis Gold Group today at 1-800-200-GOLD and find out how you can add precious metals to your IRA. That's 1-800-200-GOLD or 1-800-200-4653. Or visit genesisgoldgroup.com. Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship.